Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Wednesday morning to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. We got a few things to discuss in this morning's video, as there will be a chance at a strong storm system moving across the country for next week. This will really bring the return of severe weather, maybe multiple days of it. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center is already really highlighting one day specifically that could bring a higher chance of severe weather for next week. So we're going to speak on that. We'll get detailed on it. Of course, we don't know all the details on it. Which day is going to be worse? Is it going to be a higher wind threat, a tornado threat? We don't know any of that yet, but we will get closer to those details as we get day by day closer. So we'll speak on that. We'll speak on a little bit on winter weather, but won't spend a whole lot of time on that. And then we'll kind of nerd out with you guys a little bit about the pattern as a whole coming up for our first several days of March. And then we'll speak on today's weather and the Wednesday forecast timestamp of the video. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. I've had to restart this video over multiple times this morning, just cannot get it together. So it seems like the more I have to restart the video, the more that the video itself will have a lot of hiccups in it. And I guess that's just the way it works. But even though I've been doing this for like 5 years, I still struggle sometimes in the mornings to get going. But anyways, if you guys got anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling. So let's start this off by looking at the European model run from overnight, and then we'll compare it against the GFS. But we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that GFS run because I do think it's a bit of an outlier. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center in the discussion actually speaks on that. So we're going to start this off for Saturday, March the 1st. So we're fully into March at this point. And as you can tell, that 540 line right here, which indicates colder air aloft, is diving down into the Great Lakes region, areas in the Midwest and the Northeast. This will bring a quick but fleeting shot of cold air. And as we move into Sunday, that dip makes it all the way down to the Southeast. This should bring us a day or two of cooler weather, but I do think that moves on out of here pretty quick. And as you can tell, the 540 line is way up here at this point. Remember, anytime I just say 540 line, just think of that as cold air aloft and basically a colder air mass in place. But you see this green and blue over here out west? That is our storm system about to move into the west. And as it does, here it comes, ejecting out of the Rockies. We have a low pressure. We have a dip in the jet right here, this upper low, creating that dip in the jet. And a 996 low based off this specific run of the Euro. We don't know the exact millibar of this low or how strong or weak it's going to be. Begins to develop across the southern plains, specifically Oklahoma and Kansas. This is around next Tuesday, March the 4th. So we could begin to get severe weather, basically on the southern to really southeast or east side of this low. North of it, you don't have the ingredients for severe weather. It's just the way the atmosphere works with these low pressures. This will be the colder side. Now, whether it's cold enough for snow in Colorado, Nebraska, we'll figure all that out as we get closer. But as we continue to progress this eastward and further out in time, we get into Wednesday morning, March the 5th. This is a 990 low cutting across the Midwest, right over St. Louis. Like I said, we don't know if that's exactly where it will be going, but this is a pretty strong low. And you see just this green over Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama. This could be a line of severe storms. Is there going to be a winter storm side to this on the northern side? I mean, it doesn't look like you have a lot of cold air working with this system. But this system's not only going to just bring a lot of heavy rain, a severe weather risk, it's going to bring strong winds with it also. But there's a little bit of snow showing up on the northern side of that low right here. So that could be very heavy wet snow, maybe north of Chicago, into Milwaukee, into lower Michigan. We don't know the specifics. This green down here in eastern Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, could be a line of storms. This is just the Euro run. It's not like these short-range models that really show us the structure of these storms and stuff like that. And then here it comes. What will it do once it gets into the northeast? Not quite sure, but it will bring a high impact storm system, whether it's a lot of strong winds and like just a lot of rain. Is it going to bring some snow? Is this going to turn weaker and further south? That seems to have been the trend so far this winter. We'll have to watch. And then we could get some backside cold air. And then we have to watch just for a colder air mass in place after this storm system sweeps through. This will bring cold air down. And who knows, this could bring a winter weather opportunity for the eastern U.S. Now, is this going to be a powerful nor'easter? Maybe a late season winter storm for areas of the mid-south, the mid-Atlantic? I don't know. But I do think there's an opportunity after day 10 to kind of day 13-ish for maybe some winter weather for areas of the eastern U.S. Whatever that is, not quite sure. But remember, I've been talking about this for almost a week now. I always thought that you watch really between the 5th and the 10th. I do think this will start a day or two early though, like the 4th into the onward. But I always thought it would be a powerful storm system several days into March. And I mean, here it is. It's looking like there's going to be a strong storm system. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I like to compare what I say a few days back and compare it to see if I'm wrong, if I'm right, to what actually could happen. And we'll have to see if it happens. But GFS is much more progressive. It's weaker. So we're starting to get to that time frame of interest. We're getting into Monday. There's a weaker system that pops up. I mean, there might be just enough cold air involved for a little bit of winter weather for the Midwest as we're getting into next Monday. But here comes our low. It's 995. So, I mean, it's somewhat of a stronger low. It's next Tuesday afternoon. So is this going to trend to the Euro, become much more of an aggressive storm system? On the GFS, it still just kind of remains weak. In fact, it weakens as it crosses into the Midwest, into areas of the Ohio Valley and really the Great Lakes region. And it's not as severe looking, I guess you would say. It's more of just a weaker low and really flattens out. And as we're getting into next Thursday, just turns into just kind of a southeast low pressure and just brings a whole lot of rain for the southeast. And then here comes that dip in the jet. Some cold air follows, and things could get weird between, I would say, that March 6th and March 12th time frame for the eastern U.S. I just want to watch that for a little bit of winter weather mischief in that time frame. But that storm system on the Euro ensemble, there's a pretty strong signal for it. So this is blended guidance. So this is 51 members blended together to kind of create one model run. So it tries to blend together the placement of this low and the strength of this low. So as we're getting into Monday morning, we got a high pressure, ridge of high pressure over the eastern U.S. And then blended model guidance has a 997 low over Oklahoma next Tuesday. And, the placement, it could be right here. It could be up here. It could be down here. It could be over here. It could be back here still. That's why that we have this huge blob of blue all around this entire area, because the low could be over here, it could be over here, it could be over here, and some of the members do show scenarios like that. But this is blended guidance, and if you average all the guidance together, this is around where the low is probably going to be, which makes sense. You compare it against the operational run, and it makes a lot of sense. And then it shows that low cutting across the Midwest into the Great Lakes region, the Ohio Valley, and then eventually into the interior Northeast. And you just look at that as, hey, that's a pretty high signal for a strong storm system cutting across the country, and then bringing the ingredients with it for just high impact weather. Now, if you look at the Euro ensemble, as far as 500 millibar wind speed, so these are winds about 18,000 feet up in the air, and this is in knots. So if you keep this going, you got this dip in the jet that begins to exit later this weekend to early next week, and it gets replaced by this dip in the jet. So if you stop it here, this is next Tuesday, and I do think there'll be a risk of some severe weather before then. I'm going to draw on this a little bit. You see how the flow dramatically goes like this? That's what we call southwest flow. This is going to bring moist air up into this region. And if this dip in the jet could very well be kind of right into here, so this will be bringing moist air up into Texas. And so you see these wind barbs right here, like this one right here. You see how it's pointing that way to the southwest? That means that's where the winds are coming from. So winds are coming up from this way, pulling in that moist air. And this is the wind flow. So this is kinematic. So you're also getting the pulling mechanism out of the Gulf of that moist air, but you're also getting the wind flow aloft in the upper levels of the atmosphere, 17, 18, 19,000 feet up in the air. When we get closer, that's when I start to like to look at the low level jet, which is winds that are 4,000 to 6,000 feet up in the air. We call it 850 millibar jet, the low level jet. So that looks prime to bring in the ingredients for severe weather. And you kind of keep on going into Wednesday, and that dip in the jet shows up over the eastern U.S. with plenty of flow from the south and southwest, riding right over the northeast and the mid-Atlantic and the southeast. This will probably bring a severe weather opportunity about a week from today across the eastern U.S. Now, is this going to be in the form of kind of a squall line, like a line of storms? Not quite sure. So I would say that the threat of severe weather for next week could start as early as next Monday and then last all the way through maybe Wednesday, Tuesday being the highlighted day across the deep south. And with that dip in the jet, with that flow coming out the south, as we start to get into Monday afternoon, kind of day number one that we watch out for, you see the moisture getting pulled into central and eastern Texas and even areas of Louisiana. Dew points start to climb into the 60s. Now, I mentioned this in yesterday morning's video. The best way to gauge how humid it is outside is not the humidity, like the relative humidity percentage. A lot of people think that's what you look at. It's not. Look at dew points. If dew points in the 60s, there is a touch of humidity outside. If they're in the 70s, it's definitely humid. But these are dew points in the 60s, which is plenty of moisture, even for the south, to get some severe weather going. But, are you going to have some sort of capping mechanism? We'll speak more on that as we get closer. But as we're getting into next Tuesday, this is like Tuesday early afternoon, we got this corridor, what we call this a moist sector, setting up for the entire state of Louisiana, all the way up into Arkansas, getting into Mississippi, eastern Texas, where dew points are climbing into the 60s, even some upper 60s in certain cases. And then we start to get into Tuesday evening, that progresses eastward. And just that sector of moist air continues to move all the way into the southeast. Now, by the time we get into the prime heating of the day, Wednesday, is this going to progress on off the coast? Or are we even going to get a severe weather day for Wednesday across the southeast? I definitely think we will, especially for Florida, potentially, especially northern Florida. But there is moisture in place. This will bring the opportunity for some severe weather. We just kind of have to watch how much for Wednesday. So if we're looking at Cape levels, this tells us how much energy is in the atmosphere to really fire up these storms. And normally it responds to how high your dew points are. But, there's Monday, and there's not a lot of juice in the atmosphere. Just a 200-300 joules per kilogram of Cape. That's not very high. Normally will not get the job done in most cases. But, this is getting into Tuesday, all right? And this is the blended guidance, the Euro Ensemble. We're starting to get some Cape values spiking over 1,000 joules per kilogram, kind of into Texas, and then over 500 joules per kilogram into Louisiana. Now, that will get the job done if you have enough kinematic energy, enough wind flow aloft and certain levels of the atmosphere, directional shear. And then we're getting into Wednesday. I do think this is a little off, but I do think there will be storm energy down here. Remember, this is blending guidance together, so some of these runs have this sector of ingredients that support severe weather further east, further west, north, south. So definitely a threat of severe weather next week. And, we're going to get more and more detailed on it the closer we get day by day. But it is enough to pop off a 15% risk of severe weather at day 7, which is for Tuesday of next week. So day 7. So you can pause the screen if you need to. It discusses this, and it even talks a little bit about the day before, and it talks a little bit about day 8, which is getting into the Carolinas and to the southeast. But the main day potentially looks to be Tuesday of next week. So let's get this back off, and it's for this area, an area that's already seen multiple episodes of severe weather this season. It's already had multiple rounds of severe of winter weather this winter. So, it looks like Little Rock, Memphis, down to Greenwood, Jackson, Vicksburg, all the way down to Macomb, Jackson, Louisiana, Monroe, Shreveport, over the Tyler, Texas, even deep down into areas of Texas. So there is going to be a severe weather episode most likely in this area. So just going to be ready. It's starting to get to that time of the year. This could definitely shift into Alabama. And we could get another rest that gets issued maybe further east and then maybe further west if confidence increases in the day before and the day after this day right here. But this is basically a slight risk. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather stands for a 15% risk of any severe weather within 25 miles into given locations. So we'll continue to watch that. As far as snow, guys, there's not a whole lot to speak on. This is the blended guidance of Euro Ensemble between now and the evening of March the 12th. There was one run yesterday that had, some people interested further south, but, to me, I didn't get interested just because it was one run. And so we have to just continue to see if we get some sort of trends. But the Euro showed some sort of deep southern snow, not deep, but it was kind of like through Tennessee into North Carolina yesterday. But, it doesn't show that. It didn't show that overnight. But anyways, definitely a solid look for heavy Rockies, Cascades, Sierra Nevada snow over the next 15 days. It gets a little murky in this area. We're not sure what's going to happen. Are we going to get any big systems? There's not a solid signal there. But I do think, especially over the next 10 days, we're going to get a steady stream of winter weather up here. And then, as these powerful low pressures cut, we could have some backside northwest flow, not that far, backside northwest flow that could potentially bring snow all the way down to the central and southern Appalachian Mountains. And like I said, I would watch that time frame kind of after day 10, even for areas somewhat south. I'm not talking about like the deep south or anything like that, but I would watch for a little bit more of a southerly track and maybe a stronger winter storm for areas of the east, just depending on where you live. So we'll continue to figure that one out, and I'm going to speak a little bit more on that in here too. So the blue is lower pressure, a storm system, and then the yellow is orange. That's higher pressure. Typically, you get above average temperatures, calmer weather with that. So you see this big blob of blue right here, and this is for Monday morning of next week. This is our storm system that we just broke down. It's going to bring a lot of weather next week across the country. Now I want you to watch as this progresses eastward in time, and here it comes, ejecting across the country. And remember, we talk a lot, if you watch me in hurricane season, we talk a lot about how the flow around low pressure, which is a hurricane, which in the northern hemisphere, well, not the normal, anywhere, lower pressure, that's a hurricane. So we got low pressure, tropical storm, same thing. That's a low pressure. It's the same thing with land stuff. I mean, this is lower pressure, and the flow around this is going just like that. So that's why, the flow going around this lower pressure, that's why we're getting so much moist air getting yanked up just like that, because the flow around lower pressure goes just like the arrows I just drew. So that's why it's pulling stuff out the south, which in this case is moist air, warm moist air out the Gulf. So you keep this going, and this storm system progresses into the east, might become negatively tilted, which could make it even more of a powerful storm system across the east. And then as this sort of lower pressure kind of pivots all the way up into Canada, it will continue to try to bring down cold air like down into here. Okay, cold air will kind of get pulled down from the north. And then I want you to see this like kind of notch out like this. See this kind of little area that's kind of sticking out to the southwest? That could be some sort of storm system. And with cold air being supplied down like this, I just want to watch something that happened kind of right after day 10. And if we're going to get some sort of early March, mid-March winter storm across the east, I do think that time period is interesting for me. So we'll continue to watch that. And then a ridge moves in, and I'll be honest, guys, that might be just about the end of winter for a lot of folks. As I do think by the time we get into mid-March, there's a lot of things that point to winter basically being over. And it takes a lot for me to say that, but there's a lot of things pointing to. Now I'm not talking about for everybody. I think we'll continue to have chances out west. In fact, I think the pattern remains favorable for the western half of the lower 48, but for the east, we might have a significant uptick in severe weather if we get something like this that happens mid-month. As if a dip in the trough, if the dip in the jet's going just like this, that means we're going to have multiple storm systems shooting just like that. And what is that going to do? That's going to pull in that moist air out of the Gulf. So that's going to bring more opportunities for severe weather. So As far as what's happening right now, we got energy shooting across the Midwest in the form of mostly rain. Some areas might be getting a little bit of snow, maybe a wintry mix, and we got just some lower pressure up here pivoting some moisture down into northern Maine. But most of the country is pretty quiet, guys. But watches, warnings, and advisories. I mean, there is nothing significant ongoing. These little areas of kind of blue, these are just special weather statements. I mean, there's some flood watches, flood advisories, I'm sorry, up here in Montana. Still got some flood warnings, along the Mississippi for all that rain y'all got last week. But, it's not super active out there. Let's get this back off your screen. And now go to the risk of any thunderstorms. Now, there is a risk of thunderstorms in the Ohio Valley areas in the Midwest today with this area of energy kind of moving through. So don't be surprised if you get some rumbles of thunder and just some good old thunderstorms, even in late February in this area today. Certainly could see it. And then the risk of excessive rainfall. There's no risk today. So the Southeast, it's a quiet day of weather. We're getting into this evening. We could get some weather that gets going here in western Kentucky, maybe a thunderstorm or two, but mainly rain. And then by the time we're waking up tomorrow morning, some of that energy could make it all the way into western Virginia and southern West Virginia. But I don't expect anything too crazy out of this. Any of this is pretty nice day of weather. Now the Northeast, some energy will begin to move in. You see Ohio getting scattered rains today, maybe even a thunderstorm or two. And then this energy starts to move into PA, Pennsylvania. We could get some mixing of some wet snow this evening in areas of northern PA, maybe the southern tier of New York. The energy will start to drift northeast, across the Northeast. The Berkshires and maybe the Catskills, the Adirondacks, Green and White Mountains could get a little wet snow from this and some light snowfall accumulations. And we're waking up tomorrow morning to just unsettled weather, but nothing, high impact or anything like that. We got some wet snow moving across Maine, and this will continue. And then we're waking up to probably a rainy start around New York City, maybe up to Boston. If it isn't raining, it could rain later in the morning. But snow, between now and the next 48 hours, a little bit of wet snow is possible in the southern tier. We get up into the Adirondacks, maybe a few inches of wet snow. Watertown going for around an inch, and then we look at, say, a little bit further northeast, my friends up here in Vermont, Maine, and New Hampshire definitely could get maybe several inches of snow. And central New Hampshire into areas of southern Maine, going for around 2 inches in Portland, Lewiston, 3 inches, and definitely a few inches of wet snow up here in Maine. Just nothing too crazy though. Definitely a wet snow for sure. Back down here in the southern plains, south central U.S., a quiet day of weather. There's nothing to speak on. Could get some showers going in the Arklatex later this evening, and they could drift into northern Louisiana, southern Arkansas later into tomorrow morning. But outside of that, nothing too crazy to speak on. And then we look at the Great Lakes region. There's that moisture shooting across Indiana, Ohio, we've already spoke on. And we could get a little bit of rain, maybe a cold rain in Detroit later this afternoon, this evening. And then just some energy continues to pass over the Great Lakes region in the form of some rain showers. You might mix with some snow eventually tomorrow morning. A little bit of cold air gets involved. So we start to get some bursts of snow up here in the UP and Michigan, northern Wisconsin. Definitely could add some snowfall accumulations, especially as we're really getting into tomorrow morning, early afternoon. And then the West, it's quiet. There's nothing to really speak on. Some snow showers across the Rockies of Colorado. But, it's quiet. There's nothing to speak on at all. Temperatures in the east, southeast, nice warm day, mid-south, 70s. Spring fever is raging on. The northeast still hanging on to winter like it always does this time of the year. And, it'll still be looking like this in the northeast late in March. But, you're getting a nice thaw up here. This is shorts weather up here in the north central U.S. and the upper Midwest and the northern plains. And then it remains nice and warm. Not as warm as yesterday across the central plains, but still not bad. And then this is the west, definitely starting to warm up. That's all I got. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. And we'll continue to get more and more focused on the severe weather threat as we get a little bit closer. God bless, and I'll talk to you tomorrow morning.